Hey guys, tonight we begin with a whisper of frost on the wind, a tale of medieval peasants who faced winters so bitter you'd think the world itself was holding its breath. It's a curious thing, isn't it? We bundle up in our modern blankets, thermostats humming, while 1,000 years ago, folks like you and me shivered through nights that could freeze a thought before it formed. There's something oddly comforting in knowing they made it through, stubborn, clever, and maybe just a bit luckier than they had any right to be. If you like drifting off to stories of forgotten lives, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of thing. For now, dim the lights, pull up a blanket, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum of white noise, settle in, and let's slip back to a time when the cold was more than an inconvenience. It was a guest who stayed too long. You're about to wander through the lives of medieval peasants, those unsung heroes who faced the darkest, iciest nights with little more than grit and a few clever tricks. This is no epic of kings or knights, but a quiet story of survival, woven from the mundane miracles of everyday folk. Let's begin. You wake up in medieval Europe, sometime in the 13th century, in a village so small it barely has a name. The air bites at your nose, and your breath clouds in front of you, even inside the house. The house, if you can call it that, is a wattle and daub affair, walls of woven sticks slathered with mud, straw, and a prayer that it holds against the wind. The roof is thatch, thick and heavy, but you can still hear the faint whistle of winter sneaking through the gaps. It's dawn, or so you think. The sun is more rumour than reality this time of year. The fire in the hearth is down to embers, and the cold has crept in like a thief, settling into your bones. You're a peasant, one of millions, and your day starts with a simple truth. If you don't outsmart the cold, it will outsmart you. The bed you're lying in isn't much. A straw mattress if you're lucky, or a pile of rushes on the floor. Blankets? Maybe a coarse woolen one, patched so many times it's more memory than fabric. If you're sharing the bed with family, and you probably are, their warmth is your first defense against the chill. You huddle close, not out of sentiment but necessity. Body heat is currency here, and nobody's rich. You rise reluctantly and poke at the embers. The fire is your lifeline, but fuel is scarce. Wood is precious, hoarded like gold, and you've learned to ration it. Some nights you burn dry dung or straw, which smokes like the devil's own pipe but gives a grudging warmth. You coax the flames back to life, and the room fills with a faint glow, pushing the shadows and the cold just a little farther away. The irony of it all? The lords in their stone castles with their roaring hearths might envy your knack for survival. They have tapestries and fur-lined cloaks, but you've got ingenuity born of having nothing else. You smile to yourself, blowing on your hands, and start the day. You step outside, and the cold hits you like a nobleman's scorn, sharp and unyielding. The ground is frozen, dusted with frost that crunches under your feet, which are wrapped in what you generously call boots, really just scraps of leather tied with twine, patched with whatever you could scavenge from the village's meagre resources. The wind sneaks through every seam, probing for weakness, but you're ready for it, because you've mastered the art of layering, a skill as vital as breathing in this medieval winter. Your first layer is a linen shift, so thin it's practically a ghost of its former self, worn soft from years of use. It clings to your skin, offering little warmth, but a faint barrier against the itch of what comes next. A woolen tunic, heavy and coarse, woven by your wife or mother in a long ago summer when the loom was your family's pride. The wool is rough, scratching at your shoulders, but it traps heat like a miser hoards coin. If you're lucky, and luck is a rare guest in winter, you've got a second tunic, maybe one passed down from a cousin who didn't survive last year's frost. It's too big, or maybe too small, but you make it work, pulling it over the first with a grunt of effort. Over that goes your cloak, a patchwork masterpiece of survival. It's mostly wool, spun from the backs of your small flock of sheep, but there are odd patches, bits of rabbit pelt from a snare you set in the fall, or a strip of cloth traded for a basket of turnips last market day. The cloak is heavy, its edges frayed, and it smells of smoke and sweat and something you can't quite place, but it's yours. You pull it tight, the wind tugging at it like a petulant child, and feel a flicker of defiance. This cloak isn't pretty, but it's a shield, and it keeps the worst of the cold at bay. Let's be honest though, these clothes haven't seen water in weeks, maybe months. Washing in winter is a fool's errand. The well is half frozen, and hauling buckets through the snow is a task for the desperate or the deranged. Soap? That's a luxury for the lords in their stone halls, not for you. Your tunic carries the faint whiff of last week's barley stew, a splash of ale from a clumsy moment at the village feast, and the earthy musk of too many days in the fields. You'd laugh if your teeth weren't chattering at the thought of modern folk wrinkling their noses at you. They'd faint at the sight of your wardrobe, but you know a secret they don't. The grime is part of the plan. The layers, dirt and all, trap heat better than any clean cloth. The smell of last week's stew? That's just the perfume of survival, and you wear it with a peasant's pride. You pause for a moment, blowing on your hands to warm them, and glance at the sky. Grey, heavy, promising more snow. The irony isn't lost on you. The lords in their castles, draped in furs so fine they gleam like moonlight, might think they've got the better deal. But you wonder if they'd trade places with you for a day, just to feel the stubborn warmth of your patchwork cloak. Their furs are soft, sure, but they've never been tested by a winter like this. Your clothes, on the other hand, are battle-scarred veterans, stitched with the thread of necessity. You've got no mirror to admire yourself, no troubadour to sing of your style, but you feel a quiet satisfaction. You're still standing, and that's more than the cold can say. Food comes next, because warmth isn't just about what you wear, it's about the fire in your belly. You shuffle back inside, where the hearth's embers are still glowing, thanks to your careful tending through the night. The air inside is only marginally warmer, but it's enough to make your fingers tingle as they thaw. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a pot of porridge simmering over the fire. It's barley or oats, grains you hoarded through the fall, like a squirrel preparing for hibernation, ground coarse and boiled with water to stretch it further. It's bland, clinging to the spoon like a sulky child, but it's hot, and that heat spreads through you like a small miracle, warming you from the inside out. If the harvest was kind, and it rarely is, you might have a sliver of cheese, hard as a river stone, but precious as gold. Or maybe there's a scrap of bacon, its saltiness a faint echo of the pig you slaughtered in autumn before the frost locked the world in its grip. You chew slowly, savouring every bite, because winter rations are a game of endurance. One careless meal, and you're staring at an empty pot come February. You've learned to stretch every morsel, mixing in whatever you can find when the grain runs low. Acorns, ground into a bitter flour, make the porridge heavier, if not tastier. Dried nettles, gathered in summer, add a faint green tang, a reminder of warmer days. The lords in their halls feast on venison and wine, their tables groaning under the weight of plenty. But you've got a peasant's palate, one that finds joy in the smallest victories. A warm bowl, a full stomach, a day without hunger. You scrape the pot clean, the wooden spoon worn smooth by years of use, and smile to yourself. It's not much, but it's enough to keep you going. The village is waking now, smoke curling from chimneys like the breath of sleepy giants. You step outside again, nodding to your neighbours, each bundled in their own peculiar armour of wool and grit. There's old Thomas, his cloak more patches than cloth, limping along with a stick, but still grinning like he's outsmarted the devil himself. There's young Marjorie, her hands red from the cold but her scarf wrapped tight, a gift from her mother before the fever took her. You're all different, yet the same, peasants bound by the shared struggle of winter, each with your own tricks to keep the cold at bay. You think about the monks in their monasteries, hunched over their manuscripts, scribbling tales of saints and miracles. They'll never write about this, the quiet genius of your layers, the way you've turned rags into resistance. They'll sing of kings and their battles, of knights in shining armour, but they'll miss the real story, the way you and your neighbours defy the winter with nothing but wool, grit, and a stubborn refusal to give up. You've got no tapestries to keep you warm, no gilded halls to shield you from the wind, but you've got warmth enough to keep moving, and that's a tale worth telling. You pull your cloak tighter, the frost sparkling on your knuckles, and head out to face the day. Your breath trails behind you, a fleeting cloud in the icy air, like a flag of defiance raised against the cold. The village is alive now, a patchwork of smoke and sound, and you're part of it. Another thread in the stubborn weave of survival. You've got your layers, your porridge, your pride. The winter may be cruel, but you're no stranger to cruelty, and you know how to outlast it. You shuffle back inside, your boots, those patched scraps of leather, leaving faint prints of frost on the packed earth floor. The cold clings to you like a jealous lover, but the hearth, that glowing heart of your home, offers a quiet promise of relief. It's not much, just a circle of stones cradling a pile of embers, but it's everything. The fire is your lifeline, your altar, your stubborn stand against the winter's relentless siege. You kneel before it, breath still clouding in the dim light, and begin the daily ritual of coaxing it back to life. The embers glow faintly, banked with ash from the night before, a trick you've mastered to keep the fire alive through the darkest hours. You add a handful of straw, brittle and dry, and blow gently, your breath stirring the sparks into tiny flames. It's a delicate dance, one misstep, and you're left with a cold hearth, a cold house, and a colder heart. Wood is scarce, hoarded like a lord's gold, and you ration it with the care of a miser. A single log, split thin to stretch it further, joins the straw, and soon the fire crackles, pushing back the shadows and the chill, if only for a while. You warm your hands, the heat stinging your cracked fingers, and feel a small victory. The cold is still there, lurking, but you've won this moment. Fuel is a constant worry, a nagging thought that never quite leaves you. The forest belongs to the Lord, and cutting wood without permission is a gamble that could cost you a hand, or worse. Some villagers risk it, slipping out under moonlight to gather fallen branches, their breath held as much from fear as from the cold. You've done it yourself, once or twice, heart-pounding as you dragged a bundle of sticks back to the village, half expecting the Lord's men to appear from the shadows. Most days, though, you make do with what's at hand. Straw from the barn, reeds from the frozen marsh, even a hedgehog's nest once, though the guilt still lingers. You've heard tales of villages burning peat, dug from the bogs, its earthy smoke curling through their homes like a guest who overstays. But your patch of earth offers no such luxury, so you make do with what you have, stacking the fuel with care, each piece a calculation of warmth versus want. The fire isn't just for warmth, it's for everything. It cooks your food, that meagre pot of barley porridge, or the occasional turnip stew, its steam a fleeting comfort in the icy air. It lights your home when the sun, stingy with its hours, abandons you to the long winter nights. And it keeps the wolves at bay, their howls drifting over the frozen fields like a warning from the wild. You've heard them closer this year, their voices sharp and hungry, and you check the door's bar twice before nightfall. The shutters are tight, the gaps stuffed with rags. But the cold still finds its way in, seeping through the cracks like a thief who knows every lock. You can't stop it entirely, but you can fight back, and the hearth is your battleground. That's when you huddle, an art form as old as the village itself. You, your family, maybe a cousin or two who's fallen on hard times, all of you pile into the same room, sometimes the same bed. The straw mattress creaks under the weight, but it's warmer for it. If you're lucky enough to have animals, a cow, a goat, a few chickens scratching in the corner, they're in here too, their breath adding to the faint heat. It's not dignified, and the smell, well, let's just say it's a rich tapestry of straw, sweat, and livestock. But dignity doesn't keep you from freezing, and you've learned to let go of pride when the wind howls. You pull the blanket, a coarse woolen thing, patched so many times it's more story than fabric, over your shoulders and press close to your kin, their warmth a currency more precious than coin. You tell stories to pass the time, your voice low and steady, weaving tales of saints who tamed wolves or tricksters who outwitted kings. The children listen, wide-eyed, their breath puffing in the firelight, while the older ones hum along to songs you've sung since you were their age. The words are rough, the tunes uneven, but they fill the room with something the cold can't touch. Sometimes you're silent, just listening to the fire's crackle and the wind's moan. Each sound a reminder of the world outside and the one you've built within. The irony isn't lost on you. The lords in their stone castles, with their roaring hearths and fur-lined beds, would recoil at the thought of sleeping next to a goat. Yet here you are, warmer for it, your family a living shield against the night. You think of old Agnes, the village's unofficial keeper of wisdom, who swears by the huddle. She's seen more winters than anyone, her face lined like a map of survival, and she claims the animals are half the reason she's still here. They breathe, don't they? She'd say, her voice creaking like a door. Breath is heat, and heat is life. You didn't believe her at first, but after a night with the goat's warmth against your back, you're inclined to agree. You smile into the dark, the fire's glow painting your face, and wonder what the monks would make of this. They scribble their chronicles of kings and crusades, but they'll never capture the quiet magic of the huddle, the way it turns a freezing night into something bearable. The fire pops, sending a spark onto the hearthstone, and you nudge it back with a stick. You're tired, your bones aching from the day's work, but you're here, surrounded by the soft snores of your family and the faint cluck of a chicken in the corner. The cold is outside, plotting, but you've got the hearth, the heart, and the huddle. You've outsmarted it for another night, and that's enough. You close your eyes, the blanket heavy on your shoulders, and let the fire's warmth carry you towards sleep, the wolves' howls fading into the distance. Morning creeps in, slow and grudging, the cold still gnawing at the edges of your home like a dog with a bone. You stir, your breath a faint cloud in the dim light, and glance at the hearth. The fire is low, a whisper of embers clinging to life, but it's there, a testament to your stubbornness and the careful tricks you've learned to keep winter at bay. You're a peasant, not a scholar or a lord, but you've got a treasury of knowledge, passed down through generations like a well-worn cloak, each trick a small defiance against the frost. One of your favourites is the hot stone, a simple but brilliant ally. You pick a smooth river rock from the pile near the hearth, one you've used a dozen times before, its surface blackened from countless fires. You nestle it among the embers, letting it soak up the heat until it glows faintly, like a tiny captured sun. Carefully, you wrap it in a scrap of cloth, old but clean enough not to catch fire, and tuck it under your cloak or into the straw of your bed. The warmth seeps into your hands, your chest, your feet, chasing away the chill for an hour or two. It's not much, but it's enough to make the difference between shivering and sleeping, and you marvel at the ingenuity of it. Who needs a lord's fur-lined gloves when you've got a rock that's loyal to the fire? Another trick is the rushlight, your answer to the long, dark nights when candles are a dream for the wealthy. You gather rushes from the marsh in summer, stiff and pithy, and store them in the rafters, dry as old bones. When the sun sets too early, you peel one, exposing its soft core, and dip it in the fat you've saved from the autumn slaughter, grease from a pig, or if you're lucky, a bit of mutton tallow. You light it, and the flame is small, flickering, burning for maybe an hour before it sputters out. It's not the blazing torch of a castle hall, but it's yours, and it pushes the darkness back just enough to see your family's faces, to mend a torn tunic, or to tell a story. You make them in batches, a quiet ritual by the hearth, each rushlight a small act of defiance against the winter's endless night. You smile as you light one, its glow warm against the cold, and think of the monks with their wax candles, oblivious to your clever thrift. Food, too, demands its own tricks, because hunger is as fierce an enemy as the cold. You've learned to stretch every scrap, to make the harvest last through the frost-locked months. In summer, you dried apples in the sun, their flesh turning leathery but sweet, a burst of flavour that reminds you of warmer days. You buried cabbages in a pit lined with straw, their crisp leaves defying the freeze, ready to be dug up when the pantry grows bare. You've even got a clay pot of ale in the corner, brewed from leftover barley, its slow fermentation a promise of warmth and calories. It's not just for drinking, though it helps you forget the cold for a while. It's survival in liquid form, a peasant's potion against the winter's bite. You sip it sparingly, savouring the faint fizz, and feel a flicker of pride. The lords may have their wine, but you've got ale, and it's yours by right of labour. The village is a library of such tricks, each household hoarding its own secrets. Old Agnes, who's seen more winters than the oak at the village edge, swears by goose fat for cracked hands and feet. You tried it once, wrinkling your nose at the smell. Rancid, heavy, like something left too long in the sun, but it works. You rub it into your knuckles, red and raw from the cold, and feel the skin soften, the pain ease. Agnes cackles when you complain about the stench, her eyes twinkling. "Smells like living, don't it?" she says, and you can't argue. Survival, you've learned, often smells worse than you'd like, but you'll take it over the alternative. There's a trick for the mind too, one that's harder to name but no less vital. You've got to believe spring will come, that the frost will loosen its grip, that the sun will remember its job. Hope is a fragile thing, easily crushed by a bad harvest or a night too cold for sleeping, but you nurture it like a seedling. You think of the lambs that will be born, the fields that will green, the warmth that will return. You've outlasted winters before, harsher ones, leaner ones, and you'll outlast this one too. You share this hope in the village, in quiet nods and murmured words, a collective stubbornness that binds you tighter than any lord's decree. The irony is rich, and you savour it like a rare bite of cheese. The chroniclers in their stone monasteries, scratching away at their parchment, will write of battles and kings, of miracles and martyrs. They'll never mention the hot stone, the rushlight, the buried cabbage, or the hope that keeps you going. They'll miss the real story, the way you and your neighbours outwit the winter with nothing but wit and will. You've got no tapestries, no silver goblets, but you've got tricks that work, and that's worth more than gold. You tuck another stone into the fire, its heat a promise for the night ahead, and settle back, the rushlight's glow soft on your face. The cold is still out there, plotting, but you've got your secrets, and they're enough. You wake to another dawn, the cold still clinging to the world like a guest who doesn't know when to leave. It's softer today, though, as if the winter has grown weary of its own ferocity, its edges dulled by the stubborn persistence of life. Inside your wattle and daub home, the air is sharp, your breath forming faint clouds in the half-light that seeps through the cracks in the shutters. The hearth holds a glow, a cluster of embers you've nursed through the night with the care of a parent tending a sick child. It's a small thing, this flicker of fire, but it feels like a triumph, a quiet testament to your refusal to let the cold win. You stretch, your joints creaking from the hard straw mattress and the weight of another winter night, and rise to meet the day, your heart steady with the rhythm of survival. The room is dim, the thatch above you heavy with frost, but the embers in the hearth are a beacon, a promise that you've made it through another of winter's darkest hours. You shuffle to the fire, your feet brushing the packed earth floor, and kneel to tend it. The embers are fragile, glowing faintly beneath their blanket of ash, but they're alive, and that's enough. You add a handful of straw, brittle as old bones, and blow gently, your breath stirring sparks into tiny flames. A splinter of wood, split thin to stretch your meagre supply, joins the pile, and soon the fire crackles, its warmth pushing back the shadows and the chill, if only for a moment. You warm your hands, the heat stinging your cracked fingers, and feel a flicker of pride. The cold is still out there, lurking like a thief, but you've won this morning, and that's a victory worth savouring. Outside, the village is hushed, wrapped in a blanket of snow that muffles the world's edges. You peer through a gap in the shutter, where frost has etched delicate patterns on the wood, like nature's own calligraphy. The sky is grey, heavy with the promise of more snow, but there's life in the silence. Smoke curls from chimneys, thin and tentative, as if the village itself is exhaling, proving it's still here. Somewhere a dog barks, its voice sharp and defiant, cutting through the stillness like a blade. You smile, blowing on your hands to warm them, the skin rough but unbroken, thanks to old Agnes's goose-fat trick. You can still smell the faint rancid tang of it on your knuckles, a reminder that survival often comes with a whiff of compromise. The cold is plotting, as it always does, but you've got your own plans, and they've carried you this far. You think back to the nights you've endured, each one a battle fought not with swords or shields, but with the quiet weapons of a peasant's life. Your cloak, that patchwork masterpiece of wool and rabbit pelt, hangs by the door, its scent a rich blend of smoke, sweat, and last week's stew. The pot of barley porridge waits for its turn on the fire, its contents stretched with acorns and dried nettles to outlast the lean months. The rushlight stubs, burned low from last night's stories, sit in a neat pile, ready to light the darkness when the sun abandons you again. These are your tools, your armour, and they've proven their worth against a foe that cares nothing for your name or your dreams. You've learned to wield them with a skill that no lord could match, because lords, with their roaring hearths and fur-lined beds, have never had to fight like this. You step outside, the snow crunching under your boots, those tattered, stubborn scraps of leather that have carried you through mud, frost, and everything in between. The cold bites at your face, but your layers hold firm. The woolen tunics and cloak a barrier between you and the wind's sharp fingers. The village is stirring now, figures moving like shadows in the pale light. There's old Thomas limping along with his stick, his cloak more patches than cloth, but his grin wide as if he's outsmarted the devil himself. Young Marjorie is there too, her scarf wrapped tight around her face, carrying a basket of kindling she must have gathered at first light, her hands red but steady. You nod to them, a silent acknowledgement of the shared struggle, the unspoken pact that binds you all. You're still here, still fighting, still alive. The cold is relentless, but so are you, and there's a quiet pride in that, a warmth that no fire can match. You pause to look out over the fields, their edges blurred by snow, stretching into the distance like a world forgotten by time. The irony of it all settles over you like a blanket. The lords in their stone castles, their hearths blazing with logs you could only dream of burning, think they've conquered the world. They have their tapestries, their fur-lined cloaks, their tables groaning under the weight of venison and wine. But you wonder if they know the satisfaction of this moment, the bone-deep relief of waking to a fire that didn't die, a family that didn't freeze, a day that offers another chance to outwit the winter. Their victories are loud, written in blood and gold, but yours are quiet, written in the smoke rising from your chimney, the footprints you leave in the snow, the steady beat of your heart against the cold. The monks in their monasteries, hunched over their parchment, will never capture this. They'll scribble tales of kings and their wars, of saints and their miracles, but they'll miss the real story, the way you and your neighbours defy the frost with nothing but grit and ingenuity. They'll never know the weight of a hot stone tucked against your side, the flicker of a rushlight in the dark, the warmth of a goat's breath in a crowded room. They'll write of crusades and crowns, but your crusade is here, in this frozen village, and your crown is the knowledge that you've made it through another night. You've got no banners to raise, no trumpets to sound, but every dawn is a flag planted in the snow, a declaration that you're still here, still standing. You think of the tricks that got you here, the hot stones, the rushlights, the buried cabbages, the ale fermenting in its clay pot. You think of the huddle, the way your family's warmth became your shield, the stories you told to keep the darkness at bay. You think of old Agnes, her cackle echoing in your memory, her goose fat a small miracle for your cracked hands. And you think of hope, that fragile, stubborn thing that keeps you going. Spring will come, you know it will. The days will lengthen, the frost will retreat, the fields will green again. You've seen it before, in winters harsher than this one, when the snow piled higher and the pantry grew emptier. You've outlasted those, and you'll outlast this one too, because that's what you do. You endure. You're about to slip into the damp, shadowy world of a medieval dungeon. Yes, a dungeon. Not the stuff of dragons and knights, but the gritty, oddly human reality of a place where time crawled slower than a snail on a rainy day. Imagine the irony, a prison cell of all places as your portal to a soothing evening's tale. If this kind of quirky history sparks your curiosity, maybe give a like or subscribe. But only if you enjoy this sort of thing. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and let the cool air carry you back centuries. You're about to drift into a forgotten corner of the past, where stone walls whisper stories of their own. You wake up in medieval Europe, in the year 1278, in a small draughty cell tucked beneath a crumbling castle in northern England. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss, and it settles on your skin like a thin, invisible shawl. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dimness, catching the faint glow of a torch somewhere down a corridor you can't quite see. You're lying on a bed of sorts, a scattering of straw over a stone floor, slightly damp but softer than you'd expect, like a grudging concession to comfort. It's not much, but it's enough to cradle your aching limbs, which feel heavy, as if the weight of the castle above is pressing down on you. You're not sure how you ended up here. Maybe it was an unpaid debt, a jest at the Lord's expense that landed poorly, or just the bad luck of lingering too long in a tavern with the wrong company. Medieval justice, you see, was less about evidence and more about mood swings. A chronicler of the time, one brother Alfric, once noted that a man could be tossed into a cell for gazing upon a bailiff with insufficient deference. Insufficient deference. The phrase alone tells you everything you need to know about the era's priorities. You shift on the straw, feeling it prick through your thin tunic, and take a moment to breathe. The air is thick, almost chewy, with a tang of mildew that clings to the back of your throat. You sit up slowly, your back protesting, and survey your new home. The cell is small, maybe 6 feet by 8, its walls made of rough-hewn stone that glistens faintly with moisture, like the inside of a cave. Each block is uneven, carved by hands that cared more for speed than symmetry, and the mortar between them crumbles slightly when you press your fingers against it. High on one wall, a single iron grate, no bigger than a loaf of bread, lets in a sliver of grey daylight. It's not much, but it's enough to remind you that the world outside still exists, moving along without you. The light catches motes of dust, drifting lazily in the air, and you watch them swirl, mesmerized by their slow dance. There's a strange calm in this, a quiet that forces you to notice the smallest things, the texture of the straw beneath your fingers, the faint chill of the stone against your bare feet. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a steady drip of water, each drop landing with the precision of a metronome. It's oddly soothing, like a heartbeat for this underground world. Then there's another sound, a quick skittering patter across the floor. You squint into the shadows and spot a rat, its eyes glinting like tiny black beads as it pauses to consider you. It's not afraid, just curious, as if you're the intruder in its domain. You decide to call it Cedric, because even a rat deserves a name in a place like this. Cedric scampers off, leaving you alone again, but his brief visit feels like a welcome, a reminder that life persists even here. You stand, stretching cautiously, and explore the cell as best you can. The walls are cool to the touch, slick with condensation, and you trace your fingers along their surface, feeling the grooves and imperfections. In one corner, you find something unexpected, a carving, crude but deliberate, etched into the stone. It's a simple cross, flanked by the name Edric and the year 1274. You run your fingers over the letters, wondering who Edric was. A thief? A heretic? Or just another soul who crossed the wrong noble? The carving feels like a message, a whisper from someone who sat here, just like you, counting the drips and watching the light shift. It's a small connection, but it grounds you, makes the cell feel less like a void and more like a place with a history. A sound at the door snaps you out of your thoughts. Heavy boots scrape against the stone floor and a key rattles in the lock. The door creaks open, revealing a guard. A wiry man with a face half hidden by a hood, his eyes tired but sharp. He carries a wooden tray with a chunk of bread, grey and hard as a river rock, and a wooden cup of watery ale that smells faintly of mud. "Eat," he mutters, sliding the tray through a slot in the door before turning away. You call him Grumble in your head, because his voice is all low growls and half-formed complaints. The bread is stale, crumbling into gritty bits when you break it, and the ale tastes like it was scooped from a ditch, but you eat anyway. You take small bites, chewing slowly, letting the act of eating fill the silence. It's not about hunger, it's about routine, a way to mark time in a place where time feels like a suggestion. You settle back onto the straw, the bread and ale gone, and listen to the dungeon's quiet symphony, the drip of water, the faint rustle of Cedric or his kin, the occasional cough from another cell down the hall. You wonder about the others here, their stories locked away behind these walls. The dungeon is grim, yes, but there's a strange peace in its slowness, its simplicity. You're not fighting battles or chasing dreams, you're just here, breathing, noticing, waiting. You lean against the wall, feeling Edric's carving under your palm, and let your eyes drift to the grate, where the light is fading to a soft, dusky grey. The world outside hums along, but for now, you're content to rest in this quiet, forgotten place, where even a rat and a scratched name feel like company. You've been in the dungeon a few days now, or maybe it's been weeks. Time down here is a slippery thing, like trying to hold water in your hands. The cell, that 6x8 box of damp stone, has started to feel less like a trap, and more like a strange, quiet world with its own pulse. You're in northern England, 1278, and the dungeon isn't just a hole to toss people into, it's an ecosystem, humming with its own peculiar rhythm. You lean back against the cool wall, straw prickling through your tunic, and let the sounds wash over you. The steady drip of water from some unseen leak, the faint rustle of your rat friend Cedric, and the low murmur of voices from cells you can't see. It's not peaceful exactly, but it's steady, like the slow breathing of someone asleep. You start to notice the patterns. The guards come and go in shifts, their boots scraping the stone floor like a metronome. There's Grumble, the wiry one with the hooded eyes and a voice like gravel, who mutters about everything. His aching feet, the cold, his wife's turnip stew that's more mush than meal. Then there's the other one, a stout man you've dubbed Barker for his laugh, a sharp bark that echoes down the corridor. They're not cruel, not like the tales of chains and whips you might have imagined. They're just men, bored and underpaid, trudging through a job that's as dull as the bread they slide through your door. You catch Grumble complaining one day about the harvest, how the rains came too late and the barley's half rotted. Another lean winter, he grumbles, not to you but to the air, as if the dungeon itself might sympathise. It's oddly comforting, these snippets of their lives. Even down here, people worry about crops and suppers. The other prisoners add their own notes to the dungeon's quiet song. Down the hall, there's a man who sings hymns, his voice wobbly but stubborn, cracking on the high notes of some Latin chant. You don't know the words, but the melody is soothing, like a lullaby from a world that feels far away. Another voice, sharp and indignant, rants about a stolen pig. Apparently, it was his pig, and the neighbour who took it is a thieving cur who'll answer to God. You smile because it's absurd, isn't it? A pig sparking a feud that landed someone here, shouting into the dark like it'll change anything. Medieval problems had a certain charm, a knack for turning the mundane into high drama. You wonder what your own crime was. Maybe you haggled too hard at the market, or smirked at a knight's rusty armour. A chronicler from York once wrote of a man jailed for borrowing a horse with excessive enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. The medieval mind loved its euphemisms. You explore your cell as much as one can explore a box barely big enough to lie down in. The walls are your map, each stone a story. You find more carvings near Edric's Cross from 1274, tally marks scratched in rows, a faint outline that might be a tree, and a crude spiral that could be a snail or just a bored prisoner's doodle. You trace them with your fingers, feeling the grooves worn smooth by time or touch. It's a kind of conversation, isn't it? You and these strangers, linked by stone and solitude. You imagine Edric sitting here, maybe humming to himself, counting the days with a sharpened pebble. Did he listen to the same drips, watch the same sliver of light through the grate? The thought is grounding, a reminder that this place, grim as it is, holds echoes of others who found ways to endure. Food comes once a day, delivered by Grumble or Barker. It's always the same. A chunk of bread hard enough to chip a tooth, a cup of ale that tastes like it was brewed in a bog, and sometimes a bowl of pottage. A watery stew with flecks of barley and something green that's probably cabbage, though it's hard to tell. You learn to eat slowly, breaking the bread into tiny pieces, letting each bite linger. It's not about hunger, it's about giving yourself something to do, a ritual to anchor the endless hours. You sip the ale, grimacing at its sour bite, and think of the taverns above, where men drink better brews and argue over pigs. The pottage, when it comes, is a small event. You scoop it with your fingers, savouring the faint warmth, the way the barley sticks to your teeth. It's terrible, but it's yours. You start to talk to yourself softly, just to hear a voice. You tell Cedric about the village you imagine outside, carts creaking, children chasing geese, the smell of baking bread. Cedric doesn't care, but he listens, or at least he doesn't run away. You tell him about Edric spinning a tale that he was a baker who stole flour to feed his family, then got caught because he tripped over a stray dog. It's nonsense, but it makes you chuckle, and the sound bounces off the walls, a small rebellion against the silence. The dungeon, you realise, is teaching you patience. There's no rush here, no deadlines or quests. Just you, the stone, and the slow drip of water. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the rhythm of this underground world carry you, like a boat on a gentle current, drifting nowhere but content to float. Days in the dungeon blur together, marked only by the shifting light through the iron grate and the slow rhythm you've come to know, the drip of water, the scurry of Cedric the rat, the distant hymn of a fellow prisoner. It's 1278 Northern England, and this cell, your 6x8 world of damp stone, has become familiar, almost intimate. But it's not a forgotten pit, not entirely. This dungeon, you've learned, is more of a holding pen for minor offenders, not the torture chamber of grim legend. No chains dangle from the walls, no screams echo down the corridors. Instead, there are visitors, and with them come stories that weave the outside world into your quiet confinement, making the cell feel less like a cage and more like a strange underground tavern where tales are currency. One morning, you're roused by the soft shuffle of sandals on stone. A priest appears at your door, a thin man with a tonsured head, his scalp gleaming like a polished egg in the torchlight. His voice is soft, almost a whisper, like he's practiced speaking to sleeping children. "Repent, my child," he says, kneeling by the door, his eyes glinting with something that's not quite piety, curiosity maybe, or a hunger for gossip. "Tell me, did you truly filch that merchant's purse, or was it merely a jest gone awry?" You're not sure what you're accused of, but you play along, spinning a vague tale about a mix-up at the market, a sack of apples mistaken for your own. He nods, lips twitching, clearly savouring the drama. You suspect he'll retell your story at the Priory, embellished with a flourish or two. Before he leaves, he slips a small apple through the slot in the door, bruised and soft but sweet as a summer day. "For your soul," he says with a wink that suggests he knows it's more for your stomach. You bite into it slowly, letting the juice linger, its tartness a tiny miracle in this damp world. It's the best thing you've tasted since the pottage, and you save half for Cedric, though he's more interested in the core. Another day, an old woman stops by, her steps slow and deliberate, her basket heavy with herbs and charms she sells to the guards. She's not supposed to talk to prisoners, but the rules down here are as flexible as Grumble's mood. She leans close to the door, her voice a low rasp, like dry leaves on a path. "The miller's at it again," she confides, as if you've known each other for years. "Cheating on his wife with the tanner's daughter. Everyone knows, but no one says." You smile, picturing the village buzzing with whispers, heads shaking over mugs of ale. Her stories are a lifeline, stitching you to the world beyond the grate. She tells you about the fair coming up, where jugglers toss torches and pigs escape their pens, and about the blacksmith's new apprentice, a clumsy boy who burned his hand on his first day. "He'll learn," she says, "or he'll starve." There's a dry humour in her words, a survivor's wit that makes you chuckle. She slips you a sprig of lavender, its scent sharp and clean, a fleeting escape from the dungeon's mildew. You tuck it into the straw, breathing it in when the air feels too heavy. The visitors don't come every day, but when they do, they bring the village to you. You start to piece together its rhythm, the market's clamour, the church bells toll, the gossip that binds it all. One afternoon, Barker, the guard with the barking laugh, lingers by your door, unusually chatty. "Heard about the cow?" he asks, grinning. "Wandered into the church during Mass, knocked over the altar candles." You laugh, imagining the priest's face, his sermon drowned out by moos and panicked shouts. Barker's laugh echoes down the hall, and for a moment you're just two people sharing a story, not prisoner and guard. He doesn't stay long, but his tale lingers, painting pictures in your mind as you lie on the straw. You start telling stories of your own, whispering them to the walls when no one's near. You talk to Edric, the name carved in the stone from 1274, imagining him as a farmer who got drunk and insulted a knight's horse. Called it a sway-backed nag, you murmur, grinning at your own invention. Landed him here for a month. The story grows each time you tell it. Edric tripping over a goose, Edric bribing a guard with a loaf of bread. It's nonsense, but it fills the silence, makes the cell feel less empty. You wonder if Edric did the same, spinning tales to keep himself sane. Maybe he talked to his own Cedric, or carved that cross to mark a prayer answered. The stories, yours and theirs, become a kind of ritual, like the daily bread or the drip of water. They're small, but they matter. You learn to listen closely, to catch the priest's sly chuckle, the old woman's knowing tone, Barker's booming laugh. The dungeon, for all its grimness, is alive with these moments, these threads of connection. You lean back, the lavender's scent faint but present, and let the voices linger in your mind. They're not just stories, they're proof that the world keeps turning, that you're still part of it, even here, in this quiet, forgotten place. You've settled into the dungeon's rhythm now, here in northern England, 1278, where time moves like a sluggish river. The cell, your 6x8 world of damp stone and straw, has become a kind of home. Its sounds, dripping water, Cedric the rat's scurry, the hymn singer's off-key notes, as familiar as your own heartbeat. The torchlight fades and flares. The iron grate high on the wall offers slivers of grey sky, and you've learned to mark the days by these small signs. But it's that grate, that tiny square of daylight, that pulls your attention most. It's your window to the world beyond, a tease of freedom that's both cruel and comforting. You lie back on the straw, its damp prickling your skin, and let your eyes linger on that patch of sky, letting it draw you out of the stone and into the life you can only imagine. The grate is small, barely wider than your hand, but it's enough to show you the weather's moods. One day, the light is sharp and blue, stinging your eyes with its brightness. Another, it's heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. You hear it sometimes, the soft patter of drops on the castle walls above, a sound that makes the dungeon feel even quieter, like it's holding its breath. You start to build a picture of the world out there, piecing it together from the sounds that drift down. There's the clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones, uneven and rattling, as if the driver's in a hurry to reach the market. You hear shouts too, merchants haggling over sacks of grain, their voices rising and falling like a song. 3 pennies for that sorry barley, one yells, and you smile, imagining the indignation, the waving hands, the crowd egging them on. A church bell tolls in the distance, slow and solemn, calling the village to prayer or marking a wedding, maybe a funeral. Each sound is a thread, weaving a tapestry of a world that's close but untouchable. The guards, Grumble and Barker, bring more pieces of that world with their chatter. Grumble, the wiry one, talks of a fair coming up, his voice gruff but tinged with excitement. Jugglers and a pig race, he mutters, passing your cell. Might even get some decent ale for once. You picture it, stalls piled with apples and wool, children chasing each other through the mud, the air thick with the smell of roasted meat. Barker, with his barking laugh, mentions a new lord's tax, squeezing us like turnips, and you wonder how the villagers manage, scraping by under the castle's shadow. Their words, tossed carelessly as they pace the corridor, are like crumbs you gather, each one feeding your hunger for the outside. You don't ask questions. They'd clam up if you did, but you listen, storing every detail like a monk copying a manuscript. You start to daydream, not of escape, but of the small things that make a life. You imagine sitting by a fire, the kind that crackles and warms your bones, not the dim torches that flicker here. You picture a loaf of bread, fresh from an oven, its crust crisp and golden. Nothing like the grey bricks grumble slides through your door. You think of the village tavern, where men argue over dice and women laugh over spilled ale. These dreams are sharp, vivid, made brighter by the dungeon's dimness. A chronicler from Lincoln once wrote of a prisoner who spent a year in a cell for singing too loudly at a feast. Too loudly. The thought makes you chuckle, the sound soft against the stone. You wonder if he dreamed of songs too, or if he just carved his name somewhere, like Edric did in 1274. The grate becomes your anchor, a way to measure time when the days blur. You watch the light shift, morning to dusk, and guess at the season. The air carries a hint of wood smoke now, sharp and autumnal, suggesting harvest time, bonfires, apples piled high in baskets. You think of the village preparing for winter, bundling hay, slaughtering pigs, the women weaving by candlelight. It's a world you're part of, even if you're stuck down here, and that thought is oddly soothing. You're not forgotten, not entirely. Grumble once promised, half joking, to bring you a scrap of roasted meat from the fair if he's in a good mood. You don't count on it, but the idea lingers. A small kindness in a place that doesn't deal in kindness. You trace Edric's carving again, the cross and name etched in the stone, and wonder what he saw through that grate. Did he watch the same clouds, hear the same bells? You talk to him sometimes, whispering questions into the dark. What kept you going, Edric? You ask, your voice barely audible. Was it the sky, or something else? There's no answer, of course, but the act of asking feels like a ritual, like lighting a candle in a church. The dungeon, for all its weight, has taught you to notice these things. The way the light softens at dusk, the texture of the straw, the faint hope in a guard's careless promise. You lean back, eyes on the grate, and let the world beyond fill your mind. A quiet dream that carries you until sleep comes. The dungeon has woven itself into your bones now, its damp stone walls and straw-strewn floor as familiar as your own heartbeat. It's 1278 northern England, and you've learned to live by this place's quiet pulse. The steady drip of water from some unseen crack, the soft scurry of Cedric the rat, your unlikely companion, and the faint glow of torchlight that ebbs and flows like a tide. The iron grate high on the wall, your tiny window to the world, has become a kind of friend, offering slivers of sky that shift from bright blue to storm grey, each change a whisper of the life beyond. You've memorized the sounds drifting down from the castle above, the creak of cartwheels, the sharp haggling of merchants, the distant toll of a church bell calling the village to prayer. The stories from visitors, the priest's sly confessions, the old woman's village gossip, Barker's barking laugh, have kept you tethered to that world, even as the stone walls hold you fast. But this morning, something feels different. The air is crisper, laced with the sharp tang of wood smoke and the faint sweetness of rotting leaves, a sign that autumn is sinking its teeth into the land. You're lying on the straw, tracing the familiar grooves of Edric's carving, a cross and name scratched into the stone in 1274, when you hear it. Footsteps, heavier than Grumble's shuffling gait or Barker's heavy plod, and the unmistakable jangle of keys, sharp and deliberate, like coins in a purse. You sit up, straw pricking through your thin tunic, your heart quickening despite the dungeon's lesson in slowness. The footsteps stop outside your cell, and the torchlight flickers, casting long shadows that dance across the walls like ghosts. The door, that heavy slab of oak and iron you've studied for days, or is it weeks? Creaks as a key grates in the lock. You hold your breath, half expecting Grumble's usual mutter or Barker's laugh. But it's Grumble who appears, his wiry frame outlined in the doorway. His face, usually creased with complaints about turnips or rain, is softer today, almost sheepish. "You're out," he says, his voice low, like he's delivering news he doesn't quite believe. "Debt's paid, or someone vouched for you. Don't ask me, I just follow orders." You blink, the words slow to sink in, as if the dungeons taught you to distrust sudden change. Out? After all this time you've measured in drips and torchlight, in the stories you've spun for Edric and Cedric, you stand, your legs wobbly from days of sitting and lying on cold stone, and feel the cell tilt slightly. Or maybe it's just your head, dizzy with the idea of freedom. Grumble steps back, gesturing toward the corridor, and you take a tentative step, your bare feet cold against the floor. The air feels different already, stirred by the open door, carrying a faint warmth from the torches. You glance back at the cell, at the straw pile that's cradled you, at Edric's carving, at the grate that's been your sky. It's strange, this pang of reluctance, as if the dungeon's become a kind of home, its quiet rhythms a comfort you didn't expect to miss. You think of Cedric, probably watching from some shadowy corner, and half smile, wondering if he'll miss your whispered tales. "Come on then," Grumble says, not unkindly, and you follow, your steps slow, each one a small rebellion against the weight of the stone you're leaving behind. The corridor is narrow, its walls slick with moisture, and the torches cast a flickering glow that makes the shadows sway like dancers. You pass other cells, their doors closed, and hear the faint hum of the hymn singer, still at it, his voice a thread of stubborn hope. You wonder if he'll get his own key one day, or if he'll carve his name beside Edric's. The stairs at the end of the corridor are steep, carved unevenly into the stone, and you climb them carefully, your hand brushing the wall for balance. Each step feels like a crossing, a slow ascent from one world to another. The air grows lighter, less heavy with mildew, and you catch a stronger whiff of wood smoke, mingled with something new. Earth, hay, the faint sweetness of apples. Your legs ache, unused to the effort, but there's a quiet thrill in the movement, in the act of climbing towards something other than stone. You emerge into the castle courtyard, and the world hits you like a song you'd forgotten. The sky is vast, a dizzying expanse of blue streaked with wisps of cloud, and the sunlight stings your eyes, forcing you to squint. The air is sharp with autumn, crisp and alive, carrying the smells of mud and smoke and baking bread from somewhere beyond the walls. The courtyard itself is a bustle of life, servants hauling baskets of apples, their red skins gleaming, a boy chasing a stray chicken, his laughter high and wild, a cart rumbling past, its wheels crunching gravel. You stand still, letting it wash over you, the noise and colour and movement so overwhelming after the dungeon's grey quiet. A woman with a basket of wool glances at you, her eyes curious but not unkind, and you wonder what she sees. A ragged figure blinking at the sun, or just another soul passing through. Grumble lingers nearby, watching you with a mix of impatience and something softer, maybe pity. "Go on then," he says, nodding toward the gate that leads to the village. "Don't make trouble, or you'll be back." You nod, not trusting your voice, and take a step toward the gate. The ground feels strange under your feet, softer than stone, and you realize you're walking on dirt, flecked with straw and pebbles. You pass a pile of firewood, its scent sharp and resinous, and hear the clang of a blacksmith's hammer in the distance, steady as a heartbeat. The village lies just beyond, its thatched roofs peeking over the castle walls, and you can almost taste it, the chatter of the market, the warmth of a tavern, the ordinary chaos of life. You pause at the gate, glancing back at the castle, its grey bulk looming like a stern parent. You think of Edric, his name etched in the dark, and the priest with his bruised apple, the old woman with her lavender sprig, Barker's tale of the cow in the church. The dungeon wasn't just a cell, it was a pause, a strange, slow space where you learned to listen, to notice the drip of water, the texture of straw, the weight of a single story. You smile, a little wryly, at the irony, a dank prison teaching you patience of all things. You think of the chronicler who wrote of a man jailed for singing too loudly at a feast, and wonder if he too found something in his cell worth keeping. Maybe he left a carving, or a song, or just a memory of the sky. You take a deep breath, letting the autumn air fill your lungs, sharp with smoke and earth and freedom. The village waits, alive with the hum of markets and bells and gossip, and you step forward, your legs steadier now. You carry the dungeon with you, not its weight, but its quiet lessons, the value of a whispered story, the comfort of a rat's company, the hope in a sliver of light. You don't know what comes next, a tavern, a trial, or just a long walk home, but you're ready or close enough. As you pass through the gate, the castle at your back, you feel the world open up, vast and messy, and yours again. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, maybe you'll dream of stone walls and torchlight, of Edric's cross, and a sky that's always waiting, just beyond the grate. You wake up in medieval Europe, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and a sluggish, reed-choked river. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, where gossip travels faster than a horse and cart. The hour is late, perhaps 2 in the morning, and the world is wrapped in a hush so deep it feels like the earth itself is holding its breath. The thatched roofs of the village gleam faintly under a waxing moon, their edges blurred by a thin mist that clings to the ground. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots, its call soft and mournful, blending with the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Your home, if you can call it that, is a modest lean-to at the village's edge, where the tidy rows of cottages give way to brambles and shadows. It's not much, a straw pallet, a rickety stool, a hearth that's more ash than fire, but it's yours, tucked away where respectable folk don't bother to wander. You're not a farmer, toiling in the fields from dawn to dusk. You're not a blacksmith, hammering iron into horseshoes or swords. You're not a priest, preaching salvation to a flock of weary souls. Your trade is quieter, stranger, one that thrives when the world turns its back and sinks into sleep. You're a grave robber, a collector of what the dead no longer need, a shadow who turns loss into livelihood. It's not a calling you chose with pride, but hunger has a way of making choices for you. Tonight you have work to do, and the thought of it stirs you from your pallet with a quiet resolve. You rise, careful not to creak the warped boards beneath your feet. The air inside your lean-to is damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and mildew. You pull on a threadbare cloak, its hem frayed from too many nights brushing against thorns and mud. Your tools are simple, laid out like a surgeon's kit, though your work is far less noble. There's a spade, its handle chipped and smoothed from use, a sack that smells of damp earth and past endeavours, and a small lantern with a shutter to keep its light from spilling too far. You check the lantern's oil, barely enough, but it'll do. Waste not, want not, as the villagers might say, though they'd spit at the thought of you applying their proverbs to your trade. Tonight's job is specific. The baker's widow passed last week, taken by a fever that swept through the village like a thief in the night. She was a kind woman, or so the whispers went, always slipping an extra loaf to the children who lingered near her oven. But kindness doesn't pay your debts, and word around the tavern is she was buried with a silver ring, a gift from her late husband. A ring like that could fetch enough coin for a month's worth of grain, maybe even a new cloak to replace the one that's more holes than wool. You don't linger on the morality of it. Such thoughts are a luxury you can't afford. The dead don't need silver, and you need to eat. You slip out of your lean-to, closing the door with a gentleness that feels almost absurd for a man about to rob a grave. The village is asleep, its windows dark, its chimneys smokeless. The only light comes from the moon, half hidden behind a veil of clouds, and the stars, sharp and unblinking. You move quietly, your boots sinking into the soft earth, avoiding the main path where a stray dog or a sleepless farmer might spot you. The church looms ahead, its stone walls a silent sentinel against the night. You pass it with a glance, half expecting its cross to glow with judgment, but it's just stone and shadow, same as always. The graveyard lies just beyond, a patchwork of uneven mounds and wooden crosses, some so weathered they tilt like drunken sailors. The fresher graves are easy to spot, their earth still loose, not yet settled by time and rain. The older ones sink into the ground, as if the dead are slowly pulling their beds deeper. You've been here before, not often, because a careless grave robber is a dead one. Too many disturbed graves, and the villagers start sharpening pitchforks. You choose your targets with care, and tonight it's the widow's grave, tucked near the edge of the yard where the grass gives way to nettles. You pause at the graveyard's boundary, where a low stone wall marks the line between the living and the dead. The irony of your work isn't lost on you. The baker who needed dough to feed the village now feeds your trade in death. His widow, who once handed out bread with a smile, lies beneath your feet, her silver ring a small rebellion against the poverty that binds you. You almost chuckle, but the night demands silence, and you've learned to listen. You set your spade to the earth, the blade biting into the frost-kissed soil, and begin to dig. The first scoop is always the hardest, breaking the ground's resistance, but you move with a practiced rhythm. The soil is heavy, clinging to your spade like a grudge, but you're patient. Each movement is deliberate, measured, because haste is your enemy. You've heard of others in your trade, fools who toppled headstones or left muddy trails straight to their doors. You're not like them. You work Chaldean system, work with care, your spade a quiet companion in the dark. The earth yields slowly, and you settle into the steady rhythm. Scrape, lift, dump. Each motion a small act of defiance against the night's stillness. The widow's grave is fresh, the dirt softer here, but it's still work, and your breath clouds in the cold air. You glance at the stars, too bright tonight, and wish for a thicker veil of clouds. The lantern's faint glow is enough to guide your hands, but you keep it low, its shutter tight. The village sleeps on, unaware, and you're grateful for it. The baker's widow, they said, was buried with care, wrapped in a shroud finer than most could afford. That ring, though, silver, simple, but heavy with promise, called to you, not out of greed, but necessity. The winter's been lean, the harvest thin, and the Lord's taxes don't wait for better days. You dig deeper, the earth growing colder, denser, as you descend. Your muscles ache, but the work is soothing in its own strange way. A quiet conversation between you, the spade, and the night. You think of the widow fleetingly. Did she slip that ring on every morning, a reminder of her husband's love? Or was it tucked away, saved for special days? You shake off the thought, the sentiment as useless as a dull blade. The dead don't care, and neither should you. The spade strikes wood, a dull thud that quickens your pulse. The coffin, not deep, not fancy, just a box to hold what's left. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow despite the chill, and glance toward the church. No light, no movement, just you and the grave, partners in the dark. The irony lingers like the mist. The baker fed the living, and now his widow feeds you. You don't laugh, laughter's too loud for this work, but there's a wry twist to your thoughts as you clear the last layer of dirt. The night is still yours, and the stars, for all their brightness, keep your secrets. You kneel, ready to pry the coffin open, the promise of silver close enough to taste. You kneel beside the widow's grave, the earth freshly turned, your spade resting against a mound of soil like an old friend weary from the night's work. The ground is heavier than you'd hoped, a stubborn blend of clay and frost that clings to the blade as if reluctant to part with its secrets. Each scoop is a study in patience, a quiet negotiation with the earth. Scrape, lift, dump. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, almost meditative, lulling you into a strange communion with the night. You move with care, because haste is a grave robber's undoing. One misplaced step, one careless clod of dirt, and the village might wake to whispers of your trade. The air is sharp, carrying the bite of early winter, and the stars above glitter with a cold indifference, your only witnesses in this solitary act. The work is lonely, but there's a peculiar comfort in its solitude. The village sleeps, its people tucked beneath threadbare blankets, dreaming of fuller harvests or the promise of heaven. You, though, are awake, carving through the earth with a precision that feels almost sacred. Grave robbing in the 13th century, you've come to know, isn't always about greed, though the thought of a silver ring keeps your hands steady. Sometimes it's about survival, about clawing your way through a world that offers little to those without land or title. The lords take their tithes, the church its dues, and the poor are left to scrape by however they can. You've heard of others in your trade, some peddling bones to alchemists who swear they hold the key to immortality, others slipping peasant knuckles into velvet pouches, passing them off as saintly relics to desperate pilgrims. You don't deal in such deceptions. A ring, a brooch, a stray coin, that's your currency, small and practical, enough to keep hunger at bay. Your spade strikes a root, gnarled and unyielding, and you freeze, heart stuttering as the dull thud cuts through the silence. It's louder than you'd like, a sound that feels like it could wake the dead themselves. You glance toward the church, its stone walls looming like a silent judge against the moonlit sky. No lantern flickers, no door creaks, just the night, still and watchful. You work around the root, careful not to snap it. A broken root means torn earth, and torn earth means questions come morning. You've heard tales of careless robbers, their clumsiness betrayed by toppled crosses or muddy trails leading straight to their doors. You're not them. You're a shadow, a breath in the dark, leaving only the faintest ripple in the earth's surface. The rhythm returns, and you sink into it, the spade an extension of your will. Scrape, lift, dump. The pile beside the grave grows, neat and contained, because a sloppy mound is as good as a signed confession. You think fleetingly of the widow. Did she know, in her fevered final days, that her ring would draw someone like you? Did she care? The dead keep their silence, and you've learned not to ask questions they can't answer. Sentiment is a luxury, heavy as the clay on your spade, and you can't afford to carry it. Still, there's an intimacy to this work, a quiet bond between you and the one you're robbing. She doesn't curse you, doesn't rise in wrath. She lies still, a silent partner in your strange trade, as you carve your way closer to her resting place. The soil shifts, growing looser now, the frost giving way to softer, darker earth. You're close, perhaps a foot from the coffin, if the gravedigger was as idle as most. You pause, your breath clouding in the cold, stinging your lungs like a gentle reprimand. The lantern's glow is faint, its shutter drawn tight to keep the light from spilling too far. You've learned to work by touch as much as sight, your fingers reading the earth's texture like a monk reads scripture. The stars are brighter than you'd prefer, bathing the graveyard in a pale silvery glow that makes you feel exposed. You'd rather have clouds thick and heavy to cloak your work, but the night offers what it offers, and you take it without complaint. You think of the stories that cling to your trade, whispered in taverns or muttered in churchyards. Grave robbers, they say, are cursed, doomed to wander as restless spirits, forever digging in the dark. You don't believe in curses, not truly, but you've murmured a prayer or two on nights when the wind howls too sharply, or the shadows seem to move. Superstition is a stubborn weed, rooting deep even in skeptical hearts. You shake it off, focusing on the task. The coffin's near now, its wooden edge grazing the tip of your spade. You slow your movements, not from fear, but from precision. A splintered coffin is a sign of disturbance, and signs are your enemy. You work with care, each scoop a whisper, each lift a vow to remain unseen. There's a dry humour in the act, if you tilt your head just right. The baker's widow, who fed the village with her husband's warm loaves, now feeds your quiet rebellion against want. You don't laugh. Laughter is too loud, too reckless. But the thought curls the corner of your mouth as you dig. The earth is your canvas, the spade your brush, and tonight you're painting a small defiance against a world that grinds the poor to dust. The soil is softer now, almost welcoming, as if the grave knows its time is near. You clear another layer, the dirt piling neatly beside you, and the night wraps you in its silence, a blanket against the cold. The work is slow, but it soothes in its own strange way. Each scoop is a step closer to the ring, to a meal, to another day above ground. You think of the village waking at dawn, oblivious to your labour. They'll pass this graveyard, cross themselves, and move on, never suspecting the earth's secrets were disturbed. That's your art, the silent shovel, the unseen hand. You're no thief, not in the way they'd think. You don't break into homes or snatch purses from belts. You take what the dead leave behind, a kind of borrowing from those who've no use for it. The coffin's close now, its outline clear in the loosened earth. You kneel, brushing dirt from your hands, and ready yourself for the next step. The night holds you, quiet and calm, and the stars keep their vigil as you work on, chasing a glint of silver in the dark. You kneel in the cold earth, the widow's grave now a shallow pit beneath you, its secrets laid bare. The coffin lies exposed, its wood damp and softened by the soil, splintering under the faint pressure of your spade. The air is heavy with the scent of turned earth, a rich, loamy smell that mingles with the crisp bite of frost. You pause, your breath clouding in the moonlight, and adjust the lantern's shutter to cast just enough glow to see by. The stars are still too bright for your liking, their light spilling across the graveyard like an accusation, but the night remains silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. You're alone, or so you hope, as you set your spade aside and reach for the coffin's lid. The wood creaks as you pry it open, a low groan that seems to carry too far in the stillness. You wince, glancing toward the church, its stone silhouette unmoved against the sky. No light flares, no footsteps echo, just the night holding its breath as you work. Inside the coffin, the baker's widow lies wrapped in a simple shroud, the fabric pale and slightly frayed, a humble farewell for a woman who fed the village. Her hands are folded neatly across her chest, and there, on her finger, the silver ring glints faintly, catching the lantern's dim light. It's smaller than you imagined, unpolished, but it holds a quiet promise. Enough coin for grain, maybe a new pair of boots to replace the ones worn thin by nights like this. You reach for it, your fingers brushing the cold, stiff fabric of her shroud, and a shiver runs through you, not from the chill but from the act itself. You mutter a quick apology under your breath, a habit born more of caution than faith. The dead don't care, you tell yourself, but a whispered word might keep the ghosts at bay, just in case. You slip the ring free, its weight slight but solid in your palm. It's a simple band, etched with a faint pattern worn smooth by years of wear. You turn it over, half expecting some inscription, some trace of the baker's love, but there's nothing, just silver, cold and quiet. You tuck it into your sack, the faint clink against a stray pebble sounding louder than it should. The coffin lies open, a dark wound in the earth, and you feel a sudden urge to close it, to restore the widow's rest. It's not sentiment, not really, just the practical need to leave no trace. You ease the lid back into place, careful not to let it snap shut, and begin the slow work of refilling the grave. The earth falls softly, each scoop a step toward invisibility. A good grave robber is a ghost, leaving the graveyard as untouched as it was at dusk. You pat the soil flat, scattering a few leaves and twigs to mask your work, blending the mound into the night's natural chaos. As you work, your mind drifts to the peril of your trade. Grave robbing isn't just frowned upon, it's a crime, one that carries a heavy price. In some villages, they drag you to the gallows, your body left to sway as a warning. In others, they get creative, branding your face with a hot iron, or worse, burying you alive in the very grave you disturbed. You've heard of a man in York who met that fate, his screams muffled by the earth as the villagers shoveled dirt over him. Poetic, perhaps, but not the kind of poetry you'd care to inspire. The thought makes you glance over your shoulder, half expecting to see a lantern bobbing in the distance. But the graveyard is still, the village asleep. You're safe for now, but safety is a fleeting thing in your line of work. The earth is nearly level now, the grave as unremarkable as its neighbours. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the cold air stinging your skin. The ring rests heavy in your sack, a small victory against the hunger that gnaws at you. But there's no triumph in it, only necessity. You think of the widow again, unbidden. Did she wear that ring every day, a quiet reminder of her husband's warmth? Or was it a treasure, saved for special moments, now buried with her out of love or oversight? You shake the thought away, as useless as a dull spade. The living have no time for such musings, not when survival demands a clear head and steady hands. The risks don't end with the law. Superstitions cling to your trade like damp earth to your boots. The villagers whisper of ghosts, of spirits that rise to curse those who disturb their rest. You don't believe in such things, not truly, but the night has a way of playing tricks. A sudden gust, a shadow that shifts too quickly, and even your skeptical heart skips a beat. You've muttered prayers on windier nights, not because you think the dead are listening, but because the act soothes the quiet panic that creeps in. Tonight, though, the air is calm, the stars steady. You finish the grave, smoothing the last of the soil, and step back to survey your work. It's clean, unremarkable, a grave like any other. No one will know, not unless they dig as you did, and who would bother? You sling the sack over your shoulder, the ring a small weight that feels heavier than it should. The lantern's glow is nearly gone, its oil spent, but you don't need it now. The moonlight is enough to guide you, though you wish it were dimmer. You move away from the grave, your boots silent on the grass, and cast one last glance at the church. It stands silent, its cross a dark outline against the sky, offering neither blessing nor curse. The irony of your work lingers like the mist around you. The baker's widow, who gave bread to the living, now gives you a chance to live another day. You don't smile. Smiles are for the careless. But there's a wry twist to your thoughts as you turn toward the woods, ready to slip back into the night's embrace. The widow's grave lies behind you, its earth smoothed and scattered with leaves, as if you were never there. The night is still, the air heavy with the damp chill of early winter, and the stars burn bright above, their light a quiet accusation you try to ignore. Your sack hangs over your shoulder, the silver ring inside a small but weighty prize, its faint clink against a stray pebble, a reminder of the night's work. You move away from the graveyard, your boots silent on the frost-kissed grass, each step a careful dance to avoid snapping a twig or rustling leaves. The village lies a mile off, its thatched roofs barely visible through the mist that clings to the fields. You choose the long path home, through the woods rather than the open road, where a stray farmer or sleepless shepherd might spot you. The night is your ally, but only if you respect its rules. The woods are dense, a tangle of oak and ash that swallow the moonlight, casting dappled shadows across your path. The air here smells of moss and decay, a sharp contrast to the loamy scent of the graveyard. You pull your cloak tighter, its frayed edges brushing against your legs, worn thin from too many nights like this. The lantern dangles from your belt, its oil spent, its shutter closed to avoid even the faintest gleam. You don't need it now. Your eyes have adjusted to the dark, and you've walked this path before, each twist and route as familiar as the lines on your hands. The sack feels heavier than it should, the ring a nagging presence, as if it carries the widow's silent judgment. You shake the thought away. Sentiment is a trap, and you've no room for it. Your steps are measured, deliberate, because movement draws attention, and attention is your enemy. A fox darts across your path, its eyes flashing briefly in the moonlight before it vanishes into the underbrush. You freeze, not out of fear, but instinct. Stillness is your shield. You wait, listening for the crunch of leaves or the snap of a branch, but the woods are quiet, save for the faint whisper of wind through the trees. You move on, your breath clouding in the cold, each exhale a small rebellion against the silence. The village feels far away, its warmth and safety a distant promise, but you're not in a hurry. Haste leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to pitchforks. You think as you walk of the strangeness of your trade. You're not a thief, not in the way the villagers would think. You don't break into homes or snatch purses from market stalls. You take from the dead, from those who no longer need their trinkets, a kind of recycling if you squint. The ring will find its way to a merchant in the next town, a man with a crooked smile and no questions, who pays in coin and keeps his mouth shut. You'll use the money for practical things, grain to fill your belly, a new cloak to replace the one that's more holes than wool, maybe a wedge of cheese if the price is right. Nothing extravagant, just enough to keep you going until the next job, the next grave, the next night spent under the stars' watchful gaze. The path dips into a shallow ravine, the ground soft with fallen leaves and pine needles. You move carefully, avoiding the slick patches where frost has settled. The woods are alive in their own quiet way, a chorus of small sounds, crickets humming, an owl calling, the distant gurgle of a stream. You feel a strange kinship with it all, as if the night has claimed you as one of its own. You're no knight, no lord, no priest with a flock to guide. You're a shadow, slipping through the cracks of a world that doesn't see you, doesn't want to see you. There's a kind of freedom in that, though it's a freedom laced with risk. You think of the risks, because how could you not? Grave robbing isn't just a sin in the church's eyes. It's a crime in the eyes of the law, one that carries a heavy toll. In some villages, they'd hang you from the nearest oak, your body left to sway as a warning to others. In others, they'd brand your face, mark you as a pariah for all to see. You've heard worse tales. A robber in Lincoln buried alive in the grave he defiled, his screams muffled by the earth as the villagers shoveled dirt over him. The irony isn't lost on you. A grave robber buried, a thief entombed. You don't dwell on it, but the thought lingers, a cold weight in your chest as you navigate the woods. Superstitions creep in too, unbidden but persistent. The villagers whisper of ghosts, of spirits that rise to curse those who disturb their rest. You don't believe in such things, not really, But the night has a way of playing tricks. A branch sways, a shadow shifts, and your heart skips just for a moment. You've muttered prayers on windier nights, not because you think the dead are watching, but because the act soothes the quiet fear that creeps in. Tonight, though, the woods are calm, the air still. No ghosts, no curses, just you, the sack, and the ring that promises a little more time above ground. You reach a clearing, the trees thinning to reveal a glimpse of the village in the distance, its rooftops faint against the horizon. Dawn is still hours away, but the sky carries a hint of grey, a subtle warning that your time is finite. You pause, crouching low, and scan the fields for movement. A shepherd might be out early, checking his flock, or a traveller passing through on the road. You see nothing, hear nothing, and move on, keeping to the shadows where the moonlight doesn't reach. The ring in your sack feels heavier now, not with weight, but with meaning. It's more than silver. It's survival. A small defiance against a world that grinds the poor to dust. You think of the widow despite yourself. Did she wear that ring every day, a quiet reminder of her husband's love? Or was it tucked away, saved for special moments, only to be buried with her out of care or oversight? You shake the thought away, but it clings, stubborn as the frost on your boots. You wonder what she'd think of you, this shadow in the night, taking what she left behind. Would she curse you, or would she understand? The dead don't speak, and you've learned not to ask. Still, there's a strange intimacy in your trade, a silent conversation between you and those you rob. They don't judge, don't gossip, don't betray you to the village. They just lie there, partners in your quiet crime. The path curves upward, climbing a gentle slope that leads to the edge of the woods. Your cottage isn't far now, its sagging roof a familiar shadow against the sky. You move faster, though still careful, the promise of rest pulling you forward. The ring will stay hidden, tucked under a loose floorboard where no one will look. You've done this before, and you'll do it again, because the world doesn't change, and neither does hunger. The woods give way to open fields, the village closer now, its silence a comfort after the graveyard's wait. You stick to the hedgerows, avoiding the road, your cloak blending with the shadows. History won't remember you, you know that. The chronicles will sing of kings and battles, of cathedrals rising to the sky, but not of you, the quiet soul who turned death into a living. There's a poetry in that, though it's not the kind anyone will write down. You reach the edge of your cottage, its door a familiar creak in the dark. You slip inside, the air damp and familiar, and hide the ring where it belongs. The sack goes in a corner, the spade beside it, and you sink onto your pallet, the straw crackling under your weight. The night has carried you through, and now it's done. You close your eyes, the stars fading beyond your walls, and let the silence take you.